Okay, I've just sewn my seam and I've used a 1.5 inch seam allowance like I told you I was going to use. So now we start ironing. On almost all the projects I ever do, I almost always iron my seam flat first. And that's just to make sure the threads get into both sides of your fabric equally. Okay, now I want you to unfold your fabrics. So you can see my really big seam allowance. Now this is one of the most important things. I want you to iron your seam allowance towards the front fabric. So in this case, it's my white denim. So that means your lining should be completely flat and should not have any fold in it. Use a lot of steam, it helps. Okay, so we have the first set ironed. And remember, we pushed both seam allowances from the lining and your front fabric towards the front fabric so your lining is completely flat. Now, we can flip your lining up and you'll notice that your front fabric is going to naturally want to curl up. And that creates our 1.5 inch desk skirt hem. Now you can use whatever seam allowance you want. I typically do a 2-inch wide seam allowance simply because it gives it a lot of weight and it helps it stay down. You'll also be able to feel if there's any fabric curling in the bottom fold here. Just make sure it's nice and flat. Again, iron and use a lot of steam. And we're almost done, you guys. So now in my front, I need to see how much more I need to cut off my fabric. And remember, for my desk skirt hem, the finished height's 9, and I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So from my folded edge to the top cut edge, my measurement should be 9.5. And it's about 9 7/8. And remember, I gave myself an extra 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to cut off whatever I don't need at the top, and then I'm going to serge it. And you might want to mark this on your lining, just in case you mark it incorrectly. Before I serge, I'm going to pin both of my layers together, simply because this denim has a little bit of a stretch to it and my lining doesn't. I'm also going to put my denim on the feed dogs on my serger so it gets taken through just a little bit faster to kind of compensate for that stretch. And I'm not going to cut off this extra stuff. I'm going to let the knives on my serger do that. Okay, I'm off to serge. If you don't have a serger, you can always use pinking shears, or you can use your regular machine and just use a zigzag stitch over the edges, just to prevent any fraying. I'll be back in a minute.